Hello and welcome to the third part of my SIP Tandy special. If you missed it somehow, SIP Tandy is a call out to all the retro tinkerers to celebrate all the tech around Tandy and Radio Shack computers and produce the videos on YouTube during the whole September. I followed the call and used the time to eventually bring my Tandy 1000 RSX back to life. In the last two parts, I built a PSU for this machine, disassembled and cleaned all the parts, and installed Microsoft DOS 622, some drivers and software. And in this video, I would like to continue the journey, talk about advantages and disadvantages of this machine, and take a deeper look at the famous Tandy sound. So let's start. I've been using this Tandy 1000 RSX now a couple of days, and I have very mixed feelings about it. Let's talk first about the advantages, which I see so far. As I told before, I really like this minimalistic look. I know it is a question of taste, but if you don't like the look, you have to admit this computer is very compact. It is also quite light and still is very extensible. You can bump up the RAM up to 9 megabytes with a standard SIM modules. Video memory can be upgraded using some standard deep memory as well. It has two full height ISO slots for additional expansion cards. And last but not least, a socket for a mathematical coprocessor. Also, the onboard features are not bad at all. It has a standard, very compatible and fast VGA chip. You can use a standard PS2 mouse and keyboard and don't need to bother with any custom adapters. Also, Tandy 1000 RSX is more advanced than all the previous models. Not only does it have a quite fast 386SX25 CPU, it also has a real-time clock. I'm also quite pleased how it is built. It has no barrel battery and there is only one electrolytic capacitor on the whole board, which is used on microphone input. There are no parts on this board which could ever leak and damage it. And even if Tandy was stuck in a heavy economical competition, this machine was thankfully made to survive ages. This is about advantages so far. Now let's talk about some disadvantages I found annoying. Some of the advantages of this Tandy 1000 RSX are disadvantages on the other hand, like the minimalistic design for example. They sacrificed a reset button, a turbo button and all the LEDs. This all reminds me on one modern company with a fruit, which also kicks out features which everybody is actually using. It is hard to tell if the machine is on or off just by looking at it. It is also hard to tell if the machine is currently on a heavy I/O operation, reading or writing from the hard drive and not hanging. I can live without the turbo button, but reset? You have to turn off the PC if you want to do hard reset every time. Some games, for example, do block Ctrl-Alt-Delete shortcut. Sometimes the machine hangs and you can't use the magic combination at all. The only way then is to turn off the machine. Not really a disadvantage, but still worth to be mentioned, is that the auto-detection of the hard drive didn't work reliably for me. Every other time the machine refused to boot due to failed hard drive detection. Maybe this works with one model better than with other, but still I found it more reliable to manually define the hard drive settings. Another minor disadvantage, which is also a victim of the minimalistic design, is a weak PSU and only two ISO slots. However, I can live with it, I guess. A bigger disadvantage, in my opinion, is the incompatibility to the older Tandy PCs. Again, having a VGA graphics is good, but dropping the Tandy graphics compatibility made most of the Tandy games unusable with this 1000 RSX. Unfortunately, many old games which supported Tandy sound coupled the detection on the Tandy graphics, and if it wasn't there, the Tandy sound was not used as well. One famous example is Lemmings as far as I know. This game doesn't make use of Tandy sound on this machine just because there is no TGA. I mean, this is not the issue of Tandy, but more of the software developers behind of the games, but still, maybe some kind of TGA emulation would be nice, just like VGA did for CGA and EGA. In my opinion, sacrificing the compatibility to the older models pushed Tandy towards the edge. They already got so many game developers to adopt Tandy sound and graphics as a standard, and then suddenly threw away their uniqueness. I will come back to this uniqueness in a minute, but before I would like to mention another terrific disadvantage of this computer, which really ruined my day. This machine has incredibly noisy audio output. Just hear to this. Every I/O operation, every memory access and so on. You have enormous noise happening. Here I'm touching the audio output amplifier. Well, you don't really hear it when using a pair of speakers, but with headphones it is an absolute horror. And the same problem exists if you try to record the sound. This machine has normally no unamplified audio output, so you have to live with it with the noise. And it took a lot of time for me to adjust the volume in a way so I can use the output for some recordings. Just as a side note, there is a missing jumper on the board, which maybe can turn off the amplifier, but this is a topic for another day. Enough about disadvantages. Let's now talk about what I have done since the last video. As I told, this machine has no physical turbo button, so I tried to find a key combination to switch the speed, but I couldn't find any. I searched on the internet and found following. The Microsoft DOS tool mode was modified by Tandy, so the speed could be switched using it. If you use a standard Microsoft DOS, you can't use it to switch the speed. Somebody wrote a tool speed to make the same, but it doesn't seem to work on this 1000 RSX whatsoever. If you know how to switch between the speed on the fly, I would be interested to know. So far, the only way I see is to use the Setup RSX tool, where you can select Start Speed and reboot the system. One question which I asked in my last video was about an error in DeskMate about wrong date. One viewer, Zombie Ryushu, suggested to me a newer version of DeskMate. I upgraded to version 3.05, which is sometimes also called 369. I don't really understand the versioning system of DeskMate. However, the problem has gone indeed. But also some sound settings disappeared, and no more nice welcome to DeskMate greeted me from the speakers. Probably I have to install some missing package. Anyway, I'm very unfamiliar with DeskMate. It is an interesting piece of history, but I'm not sure about its advantage over pure DOS with some programs for each task. Regardless, to say that I really suck in Hangman. My English is too bad for it, and I don't know 80% of the words it throws at me. Maybe I should use it just to improve my English? Well, anyway, let's come back to the uniqueness of Tandy computers and why they gain such a popularity. One big advantage over an early IBM PCs was its graphical and audio capabilities for gaming. At that time, where IBM XT and early ATs could only CGA graphics with its ugly 4-color palettes at 320 by 200 resolution, TGA, or Tandy Graphics, offered already EGA-level graphics with 16 colors at the same resolution and was CGA compatible as well. The same advantage was in regards to audio capabilities. IBM's PCs could only one voice PC speaker, but Tandy already offered 3 voice plus noise channel for music and digital to analog converter for digital effects. This technology was far superior to what IBM PCs could offer at the time. That's why so many games supported these features. However, the market for IBM was strong, and Tandy was struggling to keep up and to stay IBM PC compatible. Soon, EGA and later VGA took over, and TGA was not more as interesting. The Tandy sound remained a little bit longer. However, unfortunately, it used I/O port 0C0, which was free on XT class machine, but was reserved for the second DMA controller on an AT. That forced Tandy to move the I/O port for the sound chip to another port, 1E0, in their AT-compatible machines, which our 1000 RSX apparently is. And that was the next nail in the coffin of Tandy, because so many games used hard-coded old port, and all of them suddenly stopped working. Fortunately, some games were made with caution and remained compatible. As an example, Prince of Persia. In version 1.3, it has additional setup program where you can select the audio settings. This game is one of the best showcases for Tandy sound in my opinion, since it makes use of both music and digital effects. Let's hear first how it sounds on a normal PC speaker and how it would also sound on a non-Tandy PC without additional sound card. Well, the music is kind of okay-ish, but the effects are just terrible. Now, let's select Tandy Sound in the settings and hear what we get. In my opinion, this is a huge difference. Not only polyphonic music sounds a lot better, you have a real digital effects instead of creepy clicking of a PC speaker. Good, let's try another game. Secret of Monkey Island supports a lot of audio alternatives. Tandy Sound is among them. Here are the options for the game. If you want a Tandy Sound, just start Monkey TS. Let's try it first with PC speaker. Monkey I for internal speaker. The sound of childhood. Now let's try Tandy Sound by starting Monkey TS. As you hear nothing. What is the problem? Well, as I said, many games use hard-coded I/O port 0C0 for the audio output. However, on our Tandy 1000 RSX, the port has been moved to 1E0, and currently, no audio data goes to that port. What can we do about it? So many games have the same issue, and despite that we have actually a Tandy Sound compatible hardware, the games would remain silent. Well, one possibility is to patch the games. It is not too complicated, but needs some debugging skills and understanding of assembler. You also can search for already patched executables online. Anyway, this approach is not very exciting. There is another way, which works more universally. What if we could intercept all the data which goes to the I/O port 0C0 and just redirect it automatically to 1E0? Then all games should work without patching. Well, luckily, there are already some guys who thought about that. I would like to introduce a project, TNDY, which recreates a Tandy sound card for a standard ISO slot, which can be used in any PC. I'll put the link into the description. So, this project uses a tool, TNDY.com, to intercept and redirect the I/O ports. This tool has some limitations, but still it works quite good, and I would like to thank the people from the TNDY project and from the German forum DOSReloaded.de helping me to get it up and running. The usage of this tool is very simple. You just call TNDY.com with old port and new port. In our case, we want to redirect the port 0C0 to 1E0, like this. You have to be sure that you don't use it with an expanded memory manager like EMM386 and Smart Drive. Both programs would keep TNDY.com from running properly. Fortunately, you usually don't need expanded memory to run the older games with Tandy sound support. Now, let's start Monkey Island again and see if our port redirection works. Quite a difference to a PC speaker, don't you think? Anyway, just to convince you even more, I have another direct comparison of the Eye of the Beholder game with PC speaker and Tandy Sound. And also the effects in the game do work. Does it always work? Well, unfortunately not. First of all, TNDY.com tool is still a work in progress as far as I understood. Second, the detection of the Tandy sound is often made by the games in a very weird way. Some games just look if a Tandy graphics adapter is used and uses audio only in combination with that. Lemmings is an example for it as far as I know. Other games look for a Tandy string in the BIOS ROM. Some games do some magic with the I/O ports to check for Tandy sound availability, and some do the combination of all above. It can be really weird sometimes. Some games will work out of the box, some will need the port redirection with TNDY.com, and some will even stop working if you use it. As a weird example, take a look at Budokan. When you start the game, Tandy sound obviously works, and you even have effects. However, as soon as you get into settings, the game complains that this is not a Tandy 1000 machine and leaves you with PC speaker, but effectively with no sound at all, at least until you restart the game. Another weird example is Gods. The game has a setup tool to set the audio options, and it seems to work with TNDY.com port redirection. However, this sounds like this. For comparison, I recorded following music in the DOSBox with Tandy emulation, and it should actually sound like this. Quite a difference, yes? There is something really odd happening. However, the effects in the game do work properly. Unfortunately, also Dune 2 seems not to work at all, even if set up correctly in the settings, either with port redirection or not. But here are some positive examples. Arkanoid. And here is Paku Paku, which also only works with port redirection on this machine. And this was what I wanted to tell you about Tandy Sound on this 1000 RSX. It seems to work with some limitations, and it is definitely better than a plain PC speaker. It is a very important part in the history of computer gaming, but it was pushed out of the market by more sophisticated solutions like AdLib and was discontinued. In this video, I first wanted also to talk about hardware upgrades and some benchmarks, but it already got quite long, so I decided to make another part. I hope you enjoyed it and would be glad to have you on my channel again when it is about the last part of this year's Tandy special with the 1000 RSX. So far, thank you and goodbye.